Om. Om. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavai Tejasvinavaditamastu Mavidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace. Peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. So, many of you have already heard this announcement, but I'm going to make it for those of you who haven't heard it. Next Friday at noon, Mother willing, the surgeon will install a pacemaker and defibrillator to correct the asynchronous heartbeat and atrial fibrillation of this heart. It's a short operation, an hour and a half to 2 hours, and barring any complications, I should go home the same day. There'll be some instructions about what I can and can't do, of course, and those will be communicated to you by a bulletin coming to you as the newsletter does, and that'll also be on the website and so on. I suspect I will be asking some people to do arati. Balakrishna has been very sweetly doing arati as needed when I wasn't able. He's going to do that again this Friday and Saturday evenings. We'll see, as I say, what the surgeon tells and the nurses tell in terms of instructions. But that's the very good news from here, that the pacemaker will be installed next Friday, Mother willing. So if any of you have any comments or questions about that, please save them for the end. We've got a lot to cover this morning. So I'll start with some other announcements. Swami Yogeshananda's memorial album, Remembering Swami Yogeshananda Ji, Remembering Swami Yogeshananda Ji, is up on the homepage of our website. Please visit this touching tribute to that great soul. And if you have anything to add, a memory or a picture of the Swami, please email it to me as soon as practical, and it will be included in that memorial album. It's not closed, it's simply everything that has been offered to us so far, Cindy has included. So Swami Yogeshananda Ji's memorial album, Remembering Swami Yogeshananda Ji, is up on the website with links to it from the Facebook page and the newsletter and so on. Please mark your personal calendar for our congregation's first face-to-face meeting. We will gather here at the center on Sunday, July 4th at 11 a.m. We should all be fully vaccinated by then. The festivities will include short talks on Swami Vivekananda and Swami Prabhavananda, some songs, and a potluck lunch. Watch your e-newsletter or check the website for more details as we get closer to July 4th. To prepare for that July 4th gathering, there will be 2 Seva Saturdays in June, on the 19th and the 26th. And just to review, a Seva Saturday is an opportunity to come and offer service to the center. It starts at 10 a.m., ends at 2 p.m. You do not need to be here for the whole 4 hours, of course. Whatever you can offer is gratefully received. And if you're here at lunchtime, which we define as 12:30, there will be a modest but tasty lunch, pizza and a beverage or something like that. So we're going to get the center ready outside and inside to receive the congregation in style. For these 2 days and on the 4th, those members who have been fully vaccinated will be welcome. So with that, we'll launch into today what we have to offer. As you know, May is a month for the study of Bhakti Yoga. A Bhakti yogi, a bhakta, has a devotional relationship with God. This is developed over time, and considerable time. This is developed over time by study, prayer, ritual, and worship. As a bhakta, you practice giving every action, thought, emotion, perception, and tendency a Godward turn. Everything you are, both positive and negative, is offered to the divine presence. Your prayer is for the carefree self-surrender of a child in its mother or father's arms, and finally, union with your beloved. In that state, no barrier of ego remains. The devotee becomes one with the divine presence in all-embracing love. This is from Chaitanya's prayer. O thou who stealest the hearts of thy devotees, do with me what thou wilt, for thou art my heart's beloved, thou and thou alone. And that's the nearly final consummation of the bhakti path. So this morning's talk is titled The Simple Secret of Centering Prayer. Centering prayer is a method of contemplative prayer or Christian meditation. Its strongest emphasis is on a practice of interior silence within the heart. Scholars see the beginnings of centering prayer among early Christian monastics known as desert fathers and mothers. They lived primarily on the desert areas of Egypt, other places as well, but primarily the desert places of Egypt, because Egypt was very friendly at that time to the Christian tradition. And this started as early as the beginnings of it seem to have been as early as the 2nd century, but it was in the 4th century after the birth of Christ that it seemed to really flourish. Much later, it is found in the Lectio Divina tradition of Benedictine monasticism, in books like The Cloud of Unknowing and the writings of Saint Teresa of Avila and Saint John of the Cross. Centering prayer, as it is practiced today, was introduced by books published in the 1970s by 3 Trappist monks of St. Joseph's Abbey in Spencer, Massachusetts. Father William Minninger, Father Basil Pennington, and Abbot Thomas Keating. This morning we will explore and discuss the simple and direct teachings of a monk who became the most widely recognized spokesperson for centering prayer, the late Father Thomas Keating. He didn't pass that long ago, a year, 18 months, something like that. Lived quite a long time at the monastery in Snowmass, Colorado. So Father Thomas Keating, here is the simple secret of centering prayer. God abides in each of our hearts, yours, mine, everyone's, waiting patiently to be found and interacted with. I'll repeat that. The simple secret of centering prayer is this: God abides in each of our hearts, yours, mine, everyone's, waiting patiently to be found and interacted with. Christ said it simply, the kingdom of heaven is within you. That's from the book of Luke. It follows, logically, that the king will be found in his kingdom within you. So if there's a kingdom within us, which is identified with the heart, of course, then the king will be found in his kingdom. Sri Ramakrishna put it this way: the heart is the drawing room of God. The master of an estate may be found at times anywhere on his estate, yet his favored place, where he can be found most often, is his drawing room. The heart is the heart of the devotee is the drawing room of God. As we will see, centering prayer is not petitionary prayer, prayer that asks for something. Petitionary or conversational prayer is fine. It's just very different from centering prayer. Here are 2 examples of petitionary prayer from Swami Vivekananda. The Swami says, pray, quote, I do not want wealth or beauty, this world or another, but thee, O God. Lord, I have become weary. O take me by the hand, Lord. I take shelter with thee. Make me thy servant. Be thou my refuge. And a second example, pray, quote, thou, our Father, our Mother, our dearest friend, thou who bearest the universe, help us to bear the little burden of this our life. Leave us not. Let us never be separated from thee. Let us always dwell in thee. That's from the complete works. You can find those 2 prayers in volume 6. Yet Vivekananda also says in volume 8, words are not necessary. Better is silent prayer, which leads us to today's exploration of centering prayer. These are Father Keating's 4 guidelines for centering prayer. First guideline, choose a sacred word as the symbol of your intention to consent to God's presence and action within. Now, the reason for the emphasis here is that God never insists. God always is present, offering the invitation for relationship. So when we do this centering prayer or something like it, we are agreeing, we're consenting, as Father Keating puts it, to God's presence and his action within. So this consent is, as far as Father Keating is concerned, is very key. So this word that you choose is the symbol of your intention to consent to God's presence and action within. Now, by the way, as in saying all this, am I suggesting that you veer off into centering prayer and leave what you've been doing? No. Like everything else that's offered from here, take what is useful to you to add to your practice, not to change your practice. It's not the role of this place to tell you what to do, but to offer those things, those principles and practices that may be of some assistance to you. So this is a way of thinking about the kind of prayer that we constantly talk about, which is contemplation, concentration, which, if practiced, leads to meditation. So, first guideline of Father Keating's, choose a sacred word as the symbol of your intention to consent to God's presence and action within. And you're left to choose the sacred word for yourself. Of course, in his books, he makes some recommendations, but it's up to you. Any word that you regard as sacred. Second guideline, sitting comfortably with eyes closed, settle briefly and silently introduce the sacred word as the symbol of your consent to God's presence and action within. Notice that he re-emphasizes this. Silently introduce. You don't say it out loud. You silently introduce this word. You can vocalize it silently or just repeat it mentally. Sitting comfortably and with eyes closed, settle briefly and silently introduce the sacred word as the symbol of your consent to God's presence and action within. What is the implication? That God will make himself or herself known to you and act within if you do this persistently. Third guideline, when you become aware of thoughts, return ever so gently to the sacred word. What does he mean by ever so gently? Don't scold yourself or recriminate with yourself. Oh, there go the thoughts again. Oh, my eyes have so little control of my mind. Blah, 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 all that kind of talk. That's just a waste of time. No, there's nothing to scold yourself for. It is the nature of the mind to think. So when you become aware of thoughts, return ever so gently to the sacred word. Pull yourself away from your thoughts. stop following any train of thought that you found yourself on and return to the sacred word. At the end of the prayer period, and notice he doesn't specify a time, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it is that's appropriate and auspicious for you. And those who gain a taste for this will quite naturally extend the period that they do this because of this sense of God's presence and action within, which is so joyous and gratifying. So the fourth guideline, at the end of the prayer period, remain in silence with eyes closed for a couple of minutes. And Swami Prabhavananda used to tell us, Swami Prabhavananda being the teacher that I came to in 73, he used to tell us that oftentimes is when the real magic occurs. After you've stopped the practice and you're just sitting quietly with the mind being still, something really remarkable will happen. So before we go on to Father Keating's further explanations, and this is, he gives some very nice instruction. Are there any comments or questions about what's been said so far? This is how we do this together, as we know. Anyone at all?
Brother Shankara, this is Janaki.
Yes, Janaki.
How does this differ from mantra meditation?
Well, mantra meditation is a form of this kind of prayer. It is a form of centering prayer. The mantra, as we understand it, has the added benefit of having not only a sacred word in the form of a holy name, our chosen ideal, at the center of the mantra or prayer, but it also has some what are called bijas or seed words that are, in addition, powerful repositories of the divine presence. As it is remarked in Swami Chaitanananda's book on Holy Mother, it's amazing how much is packed into those seed words in the mantra. As you practice the mantra, they unfold themselves. Now, Christianity has mantras as well, but centering prayer is the simplest form. And the key, as Father Keating pointed out in 2 of his 4 guidelines, is your consent to God's presence and action within. So, though there is power in the other words in a mantra, as Father Keating says, the power is God's. So, if you persist in centering prayer all by itself, you will, according to Father Keating, you will find God's presence and action within. This is all about that, particularly from a bhakta's perspective. It's all about discovering the truth of our being, which is the divine presence. these are different, slightly different methods. But those 4 guidelines of Father Keating's could be modified so easily for your mantra, simply by saying, repeat the mantra rather than a sacred word of your choice. Any follow-up question to that, Janaki, or is that enough?
Enough. Thank you very much.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
I wanted to share something very similar to what you are saying. Last week, I attended on Zoom Jungian psychology lectures. It was a 4-day session. And one of the speakers, Andrew Harvey, he spoke about the prayers and keep it. And he said 4 things. First of all, he said that in the beginning, he was a very scholarly, very arrogant type of professor at Oxford University.
Mm-hmm.
And he was full of it. I'm learned and this and
Right.
until he went to India. And this is about 50 years ago. And he met in Pondicherry, Aurobindo, Aurobindo's ashram. And he went to him and he just said that, what about all this? He did not say nonsense, but he said, you really think that God is real and you can really pray to God, and is it something like God? And Aurobindo just looked at him and he said, just sit with me and be quiet. Totally no, bragging or no, this, I lectured on this or that. Just sit here and see, totally quietly, see what happens inside.
Mm-hmm.
And then he led him to 3 important steps of prayers, which sound extremely similar to what you're saying. He says, first of all, keep it simple, simple, simple. And what he meant by simple, he said, just like you utter when your beloved's name, it may be your husband, wife, your friend, your grandchild, whatever, and how your face breaks up in joy, how deeply you feel happy. So with that kind of joy, repeat God's name or whoever is dear to you. And that way you enter into that praying mood. So keep it simple. Then second thing said, be open and true. Totally humble. Totally, just I'm not nothing, but I am here with you. And you do with whatever you want to with me. So being humble. And third thing is say, oh Lord, I do not know you, but so much I want to know you. And these 3 things, rising from your heart, and that leads you into that kind of very simple prayer of being in presence of God and repeating the thought, repeating the idea.
Thank you, Uma. This is a real contribution from another direction. Yes, as you will see from Father Keating's instructions, this is indeed very simple.
Thank you.
And what you just said is very similar.
Simple is the word.
Yes. So this is from Father Keating's the method of centering prayer. Centering prayer is a method designed to facilitate the development of contemplative prayer by preparing your faculties to cooperate with this gift. I'll repeat that. Centering prayer is a method designed to facilitate the development of contemplative prayer by preparing your faculties to cooperate with this gift. And I'll define contemplative prayer after a bit. And he refers to it as a gift, to cooperate with this gift. It is an attempt to present the teachings of earlier time, for example, as it appears in the book, The Cloud of Unknowing, in an updated form, and to put a certain order and regularity into it. So that's what centering prayer is about. It is not meant to replace other kinds of prayer. It simply puts other kinds of prayer into a new and fuller perspective. During the time of prayer, we consent to God's presence and action within. At other times, our attention moves outward to discover God's presence everywhere. So during the time of centering prayer, we consent to God's presence and action within. At other times, our attention moves outward to discover God's presence everywhere. And that is because, having discovered the divine within, we can begin to see it as it appears in other people, in animals, in the beauty of nature, and so on. So I said I would define contemplative prayer. This is, of course, not my definition. This is Father Keating's contemplative prayer. Contemplative prayer is the normal development of the grace of baptism and the regular practice of lectio divina. Now I'll define lectio divina, or give Father Keating's definition of that a bit later. Contemplative prayer is the normal development of the grace of baptism and the regular practice of lectio divina. We may think of prayer as thoughts or feelings expressed in words, but this is only one expression. Contemplative prayer is the opening of mind and heart, our whole being, to God, the ultimate mystery, beyond thoughts, words, and emotions. We open our awareness to God, who we know by faith. So I'm going to repeat that. We open our awareness to God, whom we know by faith is within us, closer than breathing, closer than thinking, closer than choosing, closer than consciousness itself. Contemplative prayer is the process of interior purification, leading, if we consent, to divine union. Now, all of this, for those of us who've been studying for some time on this path, with this place, all these are very familiar thoughts. A process of interior purification, leading, if we consent, to divine union. And then this, which is such a beautiful way of seeing Scripture. This is the definition of Lectio Divina. Lectio Divina is the most traditional way of cultivating friendship with Christ. Lectio Divina is the most traditional way of cultivating friendship with Christ. It is a way of listening to the texts of Scripture as if we were in conversation with Christ and he were suggesting the topics of conversation. The daily encounter, notice daily, this regularity is absolutely central to every spiritual practice in whatever tradition. It's the only way that leads to purification and ultimately to sainthood. What is sainthood? Sainthood is union with the divine. The daily encounter with Christ and reflection on his word leads beyond mere acquaintanceship to an attitude of friendship, trust, and love. Now, this is the heart of the devotional path, moving beyond mere acquaintanceship to an attitude of friendship, trust, and love. Conversation simplifies and gives way to communing, whereas Gregory the Great, who lived in the 6th century, conversation simplifies and gives way to communing, or as Gregory the Great, summarizing the Christian contemplative tradition, puts it, resting in God. Resting in God. Come to me, all ye who are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. This was the classical meaning of contemplative prayer for the first 16 centuries. So before I go on to, of course, Father Keating offers us not only these definitions, but being the good monk and scholastic that he is, he offers us the theological background. But before I go on to that, are there any comments or questions about your own reactions, about your own practice, about your own way of being with the divine? How does this touch you? How does this reach you?
I just love the friend part of this focus of this, and it's so sad to me that so many, especially Christians, have been sold a bill of goods about what the right relationship with God is, to be afraid of, rather than friend. And this morning, I just wanted to share in relation to this. I was just thinking about, the names of God in different religions, and even the names of, say, Jesus was not Jesus's actual name when he was embodied. The Hebrew is Yeshua, which is short for a longer version of that. But I think a more important question is not what was Jesus's real name, but what is Christ's name? And the thing is, if you call Christ or God Jesus, that being is not going to say, "Don't call me that." Just like your mother is not going to, if you call her mama, she's not going to say, "That's not my name." It's calling to that divine being within you that loves you and that you love and that is love, the name doesn't matter. It's like, I don't care what you call me, just call me.
Right. That's exactly.
So, but just call me.
Exactly.
And that's a friend, a parent.
And consent to my speaking to you.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah, the be quiet part.
Ah.
As Numa was saying.
Yeah.
Right.
Be quiet and listen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly, Sarah. Well, thank you for that. Yes. If we think of the Lord as our friend, as our dearly beloved, for thou art my heart's beloved, thou and thou alone, then so much becomes possible. Thank you. Anything else from anyone?
One more thing. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna and Arjuna, they are not only teacher and disciple, they are friends. They are
Oh, yes.
bosom friends. And so many Sanskrit sentences, he addresses Krishna as He Yadav, He Sakheti. Sakheti means, oh my dearest friend.
Mhm.
So Sakha Bhava. So he worships Krishna as not only a Jnani or a Jagat Guru, but he worships also as my dearest friend to whom I can go when I'm in trouble. And I know I trust him. And that's how Gandhi went to Rajchandra, that this is the person I trust most, and I rely upon his judgment and guidance.
Yes.
So that Sakha Bhav, that is very, very important. And remember, Brother Shankara, in Bhakti, there are 4 types. Dasya Bhava, that I am your servant. Then I am your child, or I am your parent. And most importantly, you are my friend. So that is perfect.
Yes, thank you, dear. Exactly. Arjuna is very much, as a matter of fact, he kind of stands amazed at sometimes how he takes for granted Krishna's divine nature, divine being, and sees him only as his chum.
I think he forgets.
Yeah.
He
Yes, yes.
that
Krishna
not so-
causes him to forget.
Right. But that's the thing. It's like if you have a friend, let's say your best friend is the Dalai Lama. Well, if you're sitting around, having tea and just, hanging out with them, I imagine there will be times you forget who it is.
Mhm.
Um,
I'm sure that's the truth.
but
I'm
that's the real thing, is when you forget and you become
One.
just, yeah, that's when you can truly connected and intimate with each other.
Right, exactly.
You forget the greatness, that he's so great. But for that,
Well, as long as you're aware of that greatness, there's this awe that keeps you that borders on fear, that keeps you from feeling and expressing that love. As Vivekananda says, where there is love, there is no fear. Where there is fear, there cannot be love. So it's that loving relationship that we seek, and this is what we're consenting to when we consent to God's presence and action within, is the development of that love and friendship. Anything else from anyone?
Brother Shankara,
Yes, Janaki.
there's a prayer before some of the Upanishads in the version that we read by Swami P. and Christopher Isherwood. And one of the lines from this prayer, which is repeated a couple of times before several Upanishads, a line in it says, I and him and he and me abiding always together. And I really love that.
Yes. Well, this is the highest evocation of the relationship. And it's the one that Hanuman points to. He says, when I'm in my waking state of awareness, you are the master and I am the servant.
Mhm.
When I am in meditation, you are the whole and I am a part.
Mhm.
When I am in the highest state of realization, just as you said it, Janaki, I am in you and you are in me. We are one.
I really like the abiding always together part.
Yes,
Makes
yes,
me feel very happy.
yes, yes. And that's the way it really is. We just don't see it. And that's part of this next topic, this theological background. But we have no need to hurry on. There's plenty of time if anyone else has anything else to say.
Hi, can I say something?
Please
My name's
do, dear.
Carla.
Yes.
It's interesting to me. I had never really heard about this idea that Christians could have this type of meditative practice of speaking to Jesus directly as a friend, except for about a month ago in a surprising source. If you listen to NPR, there's a show called Hidden Brain with
Mhm.
Shankara. And so he had an episode on invisible friends. And so he talked about this practice among Christians of befriending Jesus, imagining he's there with you, having conversations with him, and how that it really, enriched their lives. And I had just never had, it's always been a more formal type of arrangement that I've seen in Christianity. So I thought that was quite interesting to see that, and then to hear you again talk about that today.
Well, it's mentioned early in this talk that these ideas appear in the Christian mystics, the Catholic Christian mystics, Saint Teresa of Avila and Saint John of the Cross. And if you decide you might like to share the book Love Poems from God, both of those saints are represented there. And this idea of friendship and this deep interior communion is in both of them, as it is in Meister Eckhart, as it is in Thomas Aquinas, as it is in St. Catherine of Siena, as it is in the other mystics from the other traditions. This wonderful sense of togetherness, abiding, as Janaki was saying, abiding together.
Well, among Methodists, it was never discussed. That's what I grew up.
Yeah. But there is that wonderful hymn. There's that wonderful Methodist hymn. I come to the garden alone while the dew is still on the roses, and the voice I hear whispering in my ear, the Son of God discloses. And he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own.
Mhm.
The joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known.
Wow.
And there are other verses. It's a Methodist hymn. So it's alluded to in their hymnals, but not very many Methodist ministers give it much rein, as it were.
I have noticed though sorry, Grace, were you fixing to say something? No, go ahead, unmute yourself and go ahead. Oh, you need to unmute yourself. We can't hear you. Yeah. Okay. There you go.
There? Okay. I was going to say thank you so much for mentioning Love Poems from God, because it is just, it's quite wonderful. And it's from Sacred Voices from the East and the West. And as a person who was raised as a Catholic, and now I'm an Episcopalian, however, all of that said, my whole view of spirituality has been informed so much from the East because of what got lost after St. Augustine. And so this is such a gift, because some of the words that I'm hearing spoken in your way of maybe viewing it are exactly words that take on a huge meaning. You know, be still and know that I am God.
Yes.
I and you, you and me. And those, when I receive the Eucharist, that's what I say. When the bread and wine are given to me, that I don't atone for sins. I say, thank you. I am in you. You are in me. And that is this great symbolism of ritual. And that has taken on a huge meaning for me, something I wrote all of my life. And because of the gifts of the East, thank you, it has enlarged my whole understanding.
Well, Grace, thank you for sharing all that. And you may be interested to know that on Monday evenings, we have a reading and discussion group of that book, Love Poems from God, at 8 p.m. on Monday evenings. The link is on the website. Please join us.
Thank you so much. Thank
We're
you.
just finishing St. Catherine of Siena. As you've read that book, I'm sure you've encountered St. Catherine.
Yeah.
And so we're just finishing St. Catherine of Siena.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, and thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else?
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
this concept of relating to God as a friend brings to my mind the example of Draupadi in Mahabharata. And she always counted upon him as a friend, and he's the only one that came to her help when everybody else abandoned her.
Yes.
That episode brings, tears to my heart, and sometimes helps me center in that direction, and appeal to God as a friend.
Yes. And in her deep distress, what does he ask her? Think of some time when you gave any bit of cloth to another for their benefit. And she does. And she is spared her humiliation. So, thank you, Swaya. Yes, Draupadi and Krishna, the Pandavas all together and their friendship with Krishna. Anything else from anyone? All right. Let's hear what Father Keating says about the theological background of centering prayer. The grace of Pentecost affirms that the risen Jesus is among us as the glorified Christ. Christ lives in each of us as the enlightened one, present everywhere and at all times. He is the living Master who continuously sends the Holy Spirit to dwell within us and to bear witness to his resurrection by empowering us to experience and manifest the fruits of the Spirit and the Beatitudes, both in prayer and action. And then there's a definition of Pentecost. Pentecost is known in the Christian church as the day on which the Spirit descended upon the disciples, the apostles. Pentecost is known in the Christian church as the day on which the Spirit descended upon the apostles, and on which, under Peter's preaching, so many thousands were converted in Jerusalem. And that's from Acts chapter 2. So this centering prayer is rooted in this relationship with God and with Christ that is that was made manifest as this descent of the Spirit on the apostles, and many were converted. So, as so often, I'm going to leave the last words to Swami Vivekananda. Here is an excerpt from a prayer that Swami Vivekananda offered at the World's Parliament of Religions in Chicago in September 1893. At the head of all the laws of nature, in and through every particle of matter and force, stands one by whose command the wind blows, the fire burns, the clouds rain, and death stalks upon the earth. And what is his nature? He is everywhere the pure and formless one, the Almighty and the All-Merciful. Thou art our Father, and thou art our Father. Thou art our beloved friend. So because I kind of butchered that, I'm going to read it again. At the head of all the laws of nature, or in and through every particle of matter and force, stands one by whose command the wind blows, the fire burns, the clouds rain, and death stalks upon the earth. And what is his nature? He is everywhere the pure and formless one, the Almighty and the All-Merciful. Thou art our Father. Thou art our beloved friend. So centering prayer is a way of becoming that friend of the divine, which as time passes, you discover it is because you are the divine. As Christ said, I and my Father are one. That is to say, he is rooted in that one, that divine one. And that's led him to say, so I am the vine, and ye are the branches. There's no separation between the vine and the branches. There's no separation between the roots, the vine, and the branches. We are that. So, any final comments or questions or thoughts from anyone?
I did have one thing. It actually popped up earlier, and then it popped up again with what you just read from Vivekananda, is that when we're little children, our father, for instance, is daddy or dad, or is our father, and not as we don't see that person as our friend. But if we're lucky, as we get older, we become adults, our relationship with our parents become more again, if we're lucky. I know this doesn't often happen, or always happen rather, but we can become friends with someone who, when we were younger and not mature yet, we saw as this, authority figure and the all-powerful. But then as we become more like them and older and mature and seeing things that they see, it becomes more of a friend relationship.
How
I
sweet.
think relationship with the divine, it can be like that too.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. And that does happen with some fortunate people, that their birth parent becomes their friend. Thank you, Sharda. Anything else from anyone? Anything to add or to ask? All right. Well, as was said in the beginning, the instructions of Father Keating for centering prayer are so familiar to us who study this Vedanta tradition as given to us by Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, Vivekananda, and Raja Maharaj. So very familiar. The idea of having a relationship with the divine and how to do that. And it's done by centering ourselves in the stillness of the heart and discovering what's there. As Sri Ramakrishna said, the drawing room of the divine presence, the divine being. So,
Brother Shankara,
yes, dear.
one name came to my mind suddenly from Indian mythology. A very famous story of Krishna and Sudama. And they were ideal friends. Sudama was a very poor Brahmin. And Krishna and Sudama used to play together when they were children. And that friendship, Krishna never ever forgot. And when he became the king of Dwarka in West Gujarat, Sudama was so poor and starving that his wife asked him, why don't you go to your childhood friend Krishna and let him know that you are starving and you need help? And Sudama was so reluctant. He said, how can I look at me and look at him? He is the king of kings. And would he even recognize me? And then his wife pestered him so much. How can you see your children starving? Why don't you go? And you may not beg, but you just appear and see what it does. And according to this story, and I did a play by children on this. And Krishna, the moment Sudama, all in his rags and beard and unshaven and all that. And he came running and embraced him and took him in his arms, took him inside the palace. And without Sudama asking anything, Krishna knew that he's here. He's so much, ashamed to speak, but I know what he wants. And before Sudama went home, without anything in his hand, he could not find his house because Krishna had turned his cottage into a very big, big mansion. So this story capitalizes on friendship between two childhood friends.
And the very deep message of We
Yeah.
don't need to say anything.
Yes.
This is where Vivekananda was coming at us when he said, yes, petitionary prayer is there, and here are some examples. But he said, better is silence.
Yes.
Just present yourself before God,
Yes.
before the divine presence in whatever form you worship it. That divine presence knows everything.
Yes.
And as in the case of Sudama,
Mhm.
Provides everything. We know of so many who are in such want, in such suffering. We do not understand and cannot understand. But one thing that we do know is that few of them know of the love and generosity of the divine. And so they don't turn in that direction. So it's up to us to serve them through the instrumentalities that exist. And there are many, many, which are creations of the divine. I mean, if you are concerned about people nearby who are hungry, there is the Atlanta Community Food Bank, just for one example. So, anything else from anyone?
Brother Shankara, this is Haima.
Yes, Ima.
On the same note of silence, I just remember Mother Teresa's quote. She said, God is the friend of silence.
Yes.
And also Father Thomas Keating, his quote really attracted me. Silence is the language God speaks, and everything else is a bad translation, he said.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, everything else is a bad translation. Thank you, dear. Yes, we find a great deal in silence if we have resort to it. Let there be peace in outer space. Let there be peace in the sky, on the earth, and in the waters. Let there be peace in the herbs, the plants, and the trees. May the gods be peaceful. May the whole universe be pervaded by peace. Let that infinite universal peace prevail throughout my being. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace. Peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Durga, Durga, Durga. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be cheerful. May you have peace of mind. May you go forward in the loving and protective embrace of the divine presence. So until we meet again, which, as I pointed out, could be as early as tomorrow evening, where we do our reading and discussion of those poems of the 12 saints, mystics, the testimony of 12 illumined souls in the book Love Poems from God. And notice that the title says not love poems about God, not love poems to God, love poems from God as they came to us through the instruments of these 12 illumined souls. So, if you so move, join us. On Tuesday evenings, we study the life of Holy Mother, Sri Sharda Devi, again at 8 p.m. On Wednesday nights, we study Swami Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga, his talks on the wisdom tradition. And then on Saturdays from 11 to noon, we have our discussion, reading and discussion of Swami Prabhavananda's book, Realizing God.
Although, sorry to interrupt, but just want to note that the Saturday class probably won't happen this Saturday.
Yeah, because
But-
I'm having an operation on Friday
Yeah.
to have a pacemaker implanted.
Yeah.
Thanks for reminding us.
And we are all sending prayers for
Thank you, dear.
success of
Yeah.
this surgery.
Thank you,
Yes.
thank
Send
you,
prayers.
thank you.
May God protect.
And the following next Sunday is an open forum on bhakti. And I don't know if I'll be able to facilitate it or not, but it will be done. Someone will facilitate it, and we will have an open forum where the whole devotional path can be discussed. And there will be a worksheet, a prompt sheet, so to speak, that will be posted in such a way that you can download it as a PDF, download it and print it as a little guide for next week's open forum on Bhakti. So it'll be an hour's discussion by all of us as we study the art of spirituality together. So have a wonderful rest of the day today, dears. And see you again soon, Mother willing. So glad you were all here today. Bye-bye.